First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah Ba'ashim Yahawashai Ba'ashim Kakudash. Yahawah, who this world ignorantly calls God. Yahawashis, who this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Bahashim means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's on the Paleo Hebrew. I also want to give double honors to the other bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. And not sure what I'm going to title this, but I wanted to go into the topic of, the timing of the end times and how through prophecy we can actually see how far we are away from Yahawashai coming back. So the reason I say this is because of what this guy here, I think he goes by the name, I forgot exactly what his name is, the guy on the left. He's been blowing up recently, spreading that same old, false Christian doctrine. But regardless, he says something that, is completely wrong. But I'm going to play the clip at the end.
It's a follow-up question here. When people point to Revelation and say, this headline is Armageddon, what do they usually misunderstand? And how should Christians read Revelation without turning news into prophecy?
That's a great question. I think we need to understand by now at this point, the news is going to profit off of suffering. Like for example, when the plane started crashing when Trump got back in office, every news headline, every time I open the phone, is a new plane crash. New plane crash. New plane crash. New plane crash. So I'm like, dang, are the pilots just getting bad this month? Or like, what's going on? And I don't think it was necessarily that. It was just they were hyperfixating on an issue. So we do need to be careful about labeling news headlines as, oh, this is the Armageddon. I think that's where the correct perspective of the end times has to be. Like, we've always been in the end times. And so we're waiting on Jesus to return a second time. And the fact of the matter is we don't know. He could come back before this podcast episode ends. He could come back 2 years from now, 2 days from now, 2 hours from now. And that should provoke us to live a life that's giving glory to God and submitting to Him.
No matter where you're watching the Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this at all.
That was the point at the end. As he said that, the Messiah, who he calls Jesus, can come back before this podcast ends and be in 2 days. Those are the time frames that I specifically wanted to go more into because it's not true. And the reason I say that is because, yes, the scriptures do say that no man knoweth the hour. Let's get that. Because I'm not refuting that point. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 36, it says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Right? So nobody knows the exact day nor time when the Messiah is coming back. But we do know what events have to transpire before he comes back. And those events haven't transpired. Okay, so the events that I'm talking about is the destruction of, or specifically the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip being made mandatory worldwide. Before the Messiah comes back, that has to happen. And we don't see that yet. That's not going to happen before that podcast ends. And that's not going to happen in 2 days. Right? Even if today they just came out and said, it's mandatory. Right? There still has to be, World War III. Okay, America, nuclear destruction. Israel being destroyed nuclearly before Yahawashai comes back. But the main thing is the mark of the beast. So let's just get straight into the scriptures. I'm not going to speak too much of my own words. But Revelation chapter 13 and verse 15, it says, and he had power to give life unto the image. Wait, actually, before I read this, you have to understand what or who is the Babylon that the Bible speaks about, right? Specifically in Revelation. When you go into it, Babylon the Great is America, okay? The United States of America. It was, prophesied that this was going to be the most wicked kingdom to ever exist, and it was going to be the most powerful kingdom of the entire world. And that's exactly, what you see if you look outside. Right? Revelation 17 and 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Right? America controls everything. And what about it? Right? You go Revelation 18 and verse 2, And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Right, so this place has every single demon. Right, all the wickedness is concentrated here. This is the most wicked empire the world has ever seen. Okay, look at what they're doing with the technology, right? Trannies. In that little clip, it came out that America is the country that most consumes pedo content, right? So that gives you the mentality of, what people are into here. And it all goes back to, first, who's in power, which are the Edomites, the wicked that the Bible speaks of. And yeah, that influence is being influenced into the people, and people are in the mentality of do whatever you want to do, right? The commandments of the Most High in their minds do not matter. So Revelation 13:15, it says, And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as will not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Okay, going into how, they're going to essentially force you to comply with the system. And if you don't, many believers are going to be put to death, right? According to Revelation, the 20th chapter, when it speaks about those that were beheaded for the witness of Yahawashis and that didn't bow down, to take the mark. So it says, And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Right? And that mark that you won't be able to buy or sell, okay, be part of society, is the microchip, okay, in the hand or in the forehead. The Neuralink is the one in the forehead. It just hasn't been made, it hasn't been deployed globally yet, on that mass scale. But soon it will. But what's the word? The more readily accessible one, or the ones that the masses are going to get, is going to be the one in the hand, just because cheaper, you don't have to do the surgery procedures, and convenience. So this has to happen before the Messiah comes back. And the reason we know this is when you go into Revelation 14 and verse 8, it says, And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Right? So that has to happen, right? In order for the Lamb and the holy angels to, burn those people up, the mark has to be here and the wicked have to take it. Right? So that's like a prerequisite. Another thing too, going into World War III has to be, essentially fully global, when the Messiah comes back. Thus say the scriptures. Because it says that 2 Ezra 13 and verse, when you go down, 32, says, And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen which I showed thee before, and then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest ascending as a man, or sawest as a man ascending. And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle they have one against another. And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together as thou sawest them, willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. But he shall stand upon the top of the Mount Zion. Right? So this is going into, the Messiah, Yahawashis, coming back and destroying all these nations. But what's the prerequisite? They already have to be fighting between each other at a global scale. Okay? So we have to see, in order, the real timeline is first, the mark of the beast has to be made mandatory. Then after that, it is allowed, for the thermonuclear missiles to fly, for America to be destroyed by nuclear missiles. And in the midst of that, Yahawashai is going to come back. That's what the scriptures say. So we're not putting a specific date and time on it. We're given the timeline, because that's, how the Father operates. It says that when it comes to prophecy, 2 Ezra 4:37, by measure hath he measured the times, and by number hath he numbered the times. And he doth not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled. Right, so everything is already planned out. There are specific times when this must go on, when this war must go on, when Trump should say this, or Xi Jinping should do that, or, everything is already planned out. And prophecy gives us insight into, that layout, into, the script. So I just wanted to touch on that, because he did go off saying that, he could come before this podcast, he could come 2 days, and we can have a general guideline as to when Yahawashi is going to come back. Now, I was looking at these comments, and you always hear the same thing, how, my mom has been saying this, my great-grandma. That's something they said right there. It says, I'm 55 years old, and I've been hearing the same predictions my whole life. The Bible is very clear. Only the Father knows, not the angels, the Son, or man. Same, I'm 56, and I've heard it every few years all my life. And, that's a common point, how people say that, I've been hearing this since my great-grandma, and how, it doesn't even matter. It's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Well, let's see what the Bible says about people that have that mentality. Because it was prophesied that people were going to have that mentality. Ezekiel chapter 12 and verse 27, it says, Son of man, behold, they of the house of Israel say, the vision that he seeth is for many days to come, and he prophesieth of times that are far off. Right, so that mentality, that way of thinking of, that ain't going to happen in our lifetime. I've been hearing that forever, It says, therefore I say unto them, thus saith Yahweh, there shall none of my words be prolonged any more, but the word which I have spoken shall be done, saith the Lord Yahweh. So these things eventually will happen, and it's all about patience. Okay, that's what it's all about, patience, and this seeing everything play out. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully this is edifying. With that, I give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahawashai, Ba'ashem Kakudash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you, like Shalom.